The wish list. Item 1. The very last thing he should do, they had told Alfie at his orientation, was move around the facility without his security fob. So, sure enough, the very first thing he had done was to lose it. No, that's not strictly accurate. That wasn't the very first thing he had done. It wasn't even the first wrong thing he had done. That had been to turn up 10 minutes late for his first day. It wasn't his fault. There'd been a tailback on the dual carriageway that had made him late for his connecting bus, so he'd missed that, and then... But they weren't interested in the why, only the when. And the shoes. The specifications had stipulated green shoes. The company brand color was an instantly recognizable forest green, and all non-delivery staff were supposed to wear it. Even the staff hidden away in the back room of a warehouse packing boxes. Alfie didn't own any green shoes. Who did? He had taken a chance with his light blue sneakers, but that, apparently, had been a bad bet. He had tried to explain to his line manager, Rolf, that many languages didn't discriminate between blue and green. Japanese, for example, until relatively recently. Maiko, a young woman whose first day this also was, backed him up on this. But then he had veered into an explanation of how the ancient Greeks had had no word for blue at all, which is why Homer had used terms like the wine-dark sea. And Rolf had simply pinched the bridge of his nose, sighed, and told Alfie to order himself a pair of branded green shoes through the app and have them delivered to the warehouse. He could use his staff discount to do it. Then Alfie had made Maiko laugh during the first presentation of the orientation. He hadn't meant to. He was asking a genuine question. The presentation said that the warehouse they were working in was the largest single-roofed building in Europe. And Alfie had asked whether that was by area or volume, and Maiko had tittered to herself nervously. Maiko had reflexively covered her mouth when she did it, but the woman from HR had glared at them both. The woman did not answer the question. She also hadn't answered his question about pensions later when they were filling out paperwork. This was just a holiday job for him. He wasn't expecting it to provide him with a pension. And yet there were only two options on the form: voluntary employee contributions, yes or no. There was no way for him to opt out entirely. The woman from HR had just stared at him as if trying to decide whether she could be bothered to hate him or not, and said, "Just tick no." He'd ticked no. He was fascinated. He was always fascinated by the way that humans could invest even the most magical, mystical of spaces with meaningless ritual. A person could be discussing all their most fervent hopes and dreams, all their plans for their future, and then furiously hunt about for a piece of wood to touch. An actor, about to embark on that extraordinary action of combined fantasy and suspension of disbelief, a play, might, having mentioned a completely imaginary character, have to go outside, turn around 3 times, and spit on the ground. Religion. The worship of gods, the communing of the mortal with the eternal, the profound exploration of personal morality, philosophy, and relationship with the universe, the reckoning with the numinous, the unknown, with powers beyond the natural, and eating fish on Friday, navigating complex lunar calendars, and understanding the difference between a canon and a prior. The warehouse was undoubtedly a magical place. It was like a fairy palace under a hill in an old tale. From the outside it was barely there, despite its size. There in the grey middle of the country, where the motorways met. Where the flat, dull December sky lay close against the flat, dull December fields. Where nothing stood out against the horizon except solitary bare, black trees beside the still black canals, the stained grey concrete of the flyovers, and the stained grey concrete of the power station cooling towers, unpacking fresh grey clouds into the stained grey sky. There spread the great green, low roofs of the warehouse, so vast you couldn't quite see it. A landscape, not a building, too big to take in. And closed to all but the elect, those who hadn't lost their security fob. But inside was the whole world. This was where every road led to, every rail line, shipping route, air corridor. Boats and blimps and trucks and trains pouring the treasures of the world into this warehouse, where they were sorted and stored by robot workers careening about in the great cavernous dark of the largest single-roofed building in Europe. A building into which few humans ever entered and even fewer ever penetrated far. A building run entirely by computers a continent away. A system sensitive to the whole world. A cough in China, a quake in California, and here in the unlit aisles between the towering shelves, a self-guiding automaton would twitch into life and start resorting water bottles and lavatory paper. Surely this was a magical place, and yet already, before Alfie had even started working there, he was surrounded by meaningless rituals. Observing the sacred calendar, wearing the correct attire demanded by the gods of branding, fulfilling the inscrutable rites to appease the computer systems of HR. So, he was not at all surprised to discover that once he did start working, there were even more rituals to observe. This one, though, belonged to the workers, not the management, and this one was where he really started doing things wrong. So far, all his infractions had been mostly mistakes, but this one was actual disobedience. The reason the orientation had been so definite about the security fob was that you needed it to open doors within the warehouse, and it would only open doors you were allowed through, and that definitely did not include the warehouse proper. No one was allowed in there, especially not the lowly box packers like Alfie. You could see it, though, from where they worked. There, behind the wall of conveyor belts which brought them the goods they were packing into boxes, there were the ends of the shelves. Shelves 2 stories high, receding away into a darkness out of which rushed robots, depositing items on the conveyors which lifted them up and across and down to Alfie and the others to pack. And this was the inevitable ritual, that in the 15-minute break which Rolf, their manager, took every morning at 11 o'clock, every newcomer had to squeeze under the conveyor belt, dodge the robots, and touch one of the shelves. It was in going under the conveyors that Alfie had lost his security fob, he was sure. There had been a moment when he had felt snagged on something. Or maybe in that moment when he stood holding the shelves, suddenly confronted with the silent immense reality of the warehouse beyond the chuntering conveyors. Either way, as he committed his last infraction of the day and tailgated Jaswinder out of the building, he indulged in a little ritual of his own. One he always observed when he lost something. He asked the fairies for help. "Good little people," he called out into the warehouse, "please help me find my security fob."